Hey everyone, Rizzo here, and welcome to the first episode of my Cold War Zombies retrospective series. In this series, I aim to cover everything substantial that Cold War Zombies has to offer, from bonus modes like Onslaught to full map releases like Die Maschine. So, without further delay, let's start this series off light and easy with Cold War's first bonus mode, Onslaught. Diving right into the positives, the gameplay loop of Onslaught is incredibly simplistic and undemanding. All the zombie staples, from perk machines, to the mystery box, to even Pack-a-Punch are absent. Instead, you just load into a multiplayer map, follow an orb, kill zombies, and occasionally fight Big Chungus. After defeating wholesome Keanu Reddit Chungus, you'll be rewarded with new weapons, equipment, a random perk, and occasionally support kill streaks. And that's it. That's the gameplay loop of Onslaught. Now, some may see this simplicity as a negative, but personally, I think this idea of stripping zombies down to something so simple and approachable is Onslaught's greatest strength. A problem I've had with just about every single one of Treyarch's bonus zombie modes is that they're too afraid of moving away from the normal zombies formula to truly shine as their own unique thing. Just as an example, Gauntlets from Black Ops 4. This was the absolute worst in this regard. It was just normal zombies gameplay on normal maps, but with tacked on objectives that often slow the game's pace to an awkward crawl. For me, zombies is at its absolute worst when you have to hold one zombie at the end of the round to complete a task. So why Treyarch thought it was a good idea making a mode comprised entirely of those moments is beyond me. Onslaught instead opted to create something new, using very basic, recognizable zombies ingredients. How successful this approach was? Well, that's up for debate, but I really do believe this was the right approach. Moving on from the gameplay, we come to the story. Much to my surprise, we actually have a lot going on here. Onslaught serves as a canonical prequel to Die Maschine and chronicles the first 2 weeks of the newly formed Requiem Task Force efforts to combat the undead. As dimensional portals begin suddenly appearing around the globe, Requiem, headed by Officer Gregory Weaver from Black Ops 1, is tasked with dropping into various breach zones around the globe and clearing out the living dead that have infested the area. During those missions, Requiem is able to learn a great deal about what they're fighting, and are even able to reverse engineer some of the dark powers born from the breaches to create helpful utilities, such as the essence bombs seen in Die Maschine. So if you were ever wondering what those weird purple bombs were, well, now you know. Pure zombie essence distilled in a way to create an explosion. Is that necessary knowledge? Absolutely not. Is it kinda neat for lore junkies like me? Yeah, it is. Further developing the world of Dark Aether are collectible intel drops. Every map, to my knowledge, has 3 separate drops, which range from military debriefings to first-hand recountings of the outbreaks by civilians caught in the surges. These are a great way to build on the overall lore of Dark Aether's new world, and gives the writers the opportunity to tell some smaller, self-contained mini-narratives about the people in these outbreak zones. For example, Nuketown's intel tells the story of a hippie commune created next door to Area 51, and Satellite gives us insight into Requiem's attempts to keep lost aerial reconnaissance photographs of the end station facility out of the public eye. Honestly, when Onslaught was revealed, this kind of world building was the last thing I expected. I figured that this mode would be just this throwaway little thing that didn't add anything of substance, and wouldn't even be canon, but I was wrong, and I'm really glad I was. Although I gotta admit, with how Onslaught and later Die Maschine's world plays out, it's really easy to believe the behind-the-scenes rumors about this game. So let's don our tinfoil hats for a moment, shall we? For those unfamiliar, and this is all unconfirmed, so take it with a pinch or maybe a cup of salt, apparently, Cold War Zombies started out as a sequel to The Frozen Dawn back when Sledgehammer was allegedly still leading the project. But when Treyarch was brought in to help steer the troubled development back in a proper direction, the project's basic ideas and its world were retrofitted to become the Dark Aether project we see now. Unlike many leaks and rumors surrounding Call of Duty, this one is super easy to believe, because where did the Frozen Dawn leave off? Oh, none of you remember World War II Zombies? It's fine, I do. One could say, I remember it so you don't have to. The Frozen Dawn left us with a world besieged by the undead, a secret strike force comprised of the world's top agents created solely to combat the undead threat, and governments around the world taking advantage of the scientific advancements brought on by the discovery of a mysterious interdimensional energy. And where does Cold War Zombies start off?
Yeah.
Even if this is true, I can't really say I care. I really just like indulging in the conspiracy side of things. I really do love the direction and the surprising amount of love that went into the story of Onslaught and its battlegrounds. For all this mode's shortcomings, this is an aspect they absolutely nailed, and I'm genuinely looking forward to what kind of stories future Onslaught maps will tell. Now here's where we talk about what just doesn't work in Onslaught. Sadly, most of the problems here are gameplay related. Hold on a minute, I hear you interject. I distinctly remember you praising Onslaught's gameplay ideas like 3 minutes ago. Yes I did. The ideas are indeed solid, but that's just it. The ideas are good. The execution of said ideas is not. Onslaught has a few key issues that really cripple the overall experience. The biggest of which is that the loot dropped by the megatons seemingly has no checks and balances in place. What I mean by this is that weapon rarity does not necessarily increase along with the surges. It's entirely possible, hell, it's actually a common occurrence, to get stuck with blue tiered weapons at Surge 30, which looks a little something like this.
Stop it! You're hurt, Leave, stop!
This leads to the games ending via the leave match button rather than an actual game over more often than not. That should never happen. The game should never get to a point where the player gives up out of frustration because they aren't able to dish out enough damage to kill enemies. For as much as I love the mode, this is a problem I've always had with Call of Duty Zombies. Even the ones I adored like Black Ops 1, Black Ops 3, and World War II eventually arrived at a point where the gameplay balance would just collapse and I'd end up quitting to do something better with my time. Now here's some context for newer players. Prior to Black Ops 4, zombie health could scale endlessly, eventually scaling into the millions. For reference on how ridiculous this is, George Romero on Call of the Dead, this big giant zombies boss, had a static 250,000 health in solo, with a multiplier that was added per player. This means that an ordinary zombie could become spongier than the spongiest zombies boss ever made, which makes it so that eventually you'll just have to rely on one-hit kill wonder weapons and traps, which gets boring really quick. You see why this is a problem now? Onslaught faces this exact same issue, but much worse. Whereas in normal zombies, it would gradually fall apart over a couple hours, Onslaught quickly collapses in just a few minutes. Surge 15, everything's fine. Surge 25, it's abject misery. Adding to this is that Megaton health is way too high in the later surges. Rather than naturally increase the difficulty of elite fights through increased zombie spawns or shrinking the surge zone or something interesting like that, the Megatons are instead made into near invincible bullet sponges. This is completely at odds with the rest of the mode's fast-paced gameplay. Which brings me to another problem, and really a question. What does Onslaught want to be? If you go into the menus, you'll see that there's rewards for beating certain waves. These rewards taper off at Surge 25, which is about the time the balance completely shits the bed. But on these same menus, it tells you maximize survival time. So what is it? Is it supposed to be a limited round gauntlet where you go for gold and then the match ends? Or is it supposed to be an infinite wave survival mode? Because it certainly isn't balanced for the latter, yet doesn't fully commit to the former. What I mean by that is that the final surge to obtain that gold chalice isn't different from the other surges. It's just another Megaton fight. And that leads to a general feeling of disappointment, and leaves me thinking, okay, I guess I should just keep going. But the game simply isn't balanced for that. Aside from the Megaton weapon drops, this conflict of interest the mode has with itself is the absolute worst part of it all. I truly believe that for Onslaught to shine, it needs to commit to one or the other. Either balance it around making it a limited round gauntlet, or rebalance the mode around infinite survival. Because at the moment, it doesn't know what it wants to be, and that leaves both sides kind of underdeveloped. And one last gameplay issue I want to talk about that isn't too big of an issue, but it's still something that bothers me a bit, is the pacing. The pacing of the match is frequently interrupted by the orb's movement. To fix this, maybe have a few stragglers spawn in during the surge transitions? Funnily enough, this exact thing can happen during the holiday variant of Onslaught. If you pick up a naughty or nice power-up towards the end of the surge and get naughty, Blitzenhunds can continue to spawn in during the orb's travel. I think something like this, where a few zombies spawn in during intermissions, should be integrated into Onslaught as a standard gameplay feature. Is it a hollow way of keeping the game's pace up? Yeah. Does it work though? Absolutely. And this last bit isn't Onslaught's fault, but I have to talk about it. PlayStation exclusivity. This sucks. And I just want to make it clear real quick. I know that Treyarch isn't to blame for this. The blame falls solely on Activision and PlayStation. And I really do feel bad for Treyarch in this situation. Because let's imagine, you're a game dev for one of the biggest game franchises on the planet. You spend so much time working on something cool with your team, and you're excited to share it with players all around the world. And then Activision comes down like, hey idiot, this thing you've been working on? Yeah, well now it's a PlayStation exclusive, and a giant majority of your fans won't even be able to play it for another year. To hear that must really suck, and I really feel bad for Treyarch on this one. In conclusion, Onslaught is in a pretty rough, confused state right now, but unlike Treyarch's past bonus modes like Turned, Gauntlets, and Meat, this mode is absolutely fixable. The problems here aren't at a deep fundamental level. All that would need to be done in my opinion is make some adjustments to Megaton weapon drops and the zombie health caps. With these small changes, I believe Onslaught can truly shine as the fun little undemanding side mode that it's striving to be. And I really do mean that descriptor as a compliment. Contrary to what those YouTube folk may tell you, not everything related to zombies needs to be this bloated monster filled with hours and hours of stuff to do every match like Origins or Zetsubo no Shima. Sometimes you're not really in the mood to go on a potentially multiple hour-long journey. Sometimes you just want to jump right into the zombie killing fun for a bit with a friend. That's the niche that Onslaught can fill, and I really do hope that Treyarch gives the mode just a bit more love as Cold War's life cycle continues. Well, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this smaller video while I continue working on my Die Maschine review. It's taken longer than normal, I know, but I just have not been feeling it as of late. So to quote the great Linkara with the famous Power Rangers rant, it'll be out when it's out.
The videos are done when they're done, and will be released when they're done.
So, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I hope you'll join me next time where I'll be reviewing the real meat of Cold War zombies and the first proper chapter of the Dark Aether saga, Die Maschine.
Well, so do you open the little sarcophagus?
Yeah, I think so. Why not?
Inside, you see a little mummy,
Yeah.
only of 6 inches tall.
Is he
He's
Mogilla's?
smiling. No, it's not Mogilla, but it could be anything. Do you fucking? What do you do? Do you eat it? Do you send it? do you send it to NASA? What do you do?
I take a picture of it and put it on Instagram.
His his little eyes open. And he goes, ah! He grabs your phone and says,
Don't take that!